All right. Then I just have to mute it when it comes up. All right, let's go ahead and be on the record in two cases, those being 2020 CR 129 and 2020 CR 728, both captioned State of Kansas versus Corey Cline. Would the parties announce their appearances, please?
May it please the court, Your Honor, the State of Kansas appears by Crystalline Ellis, Deputy District Attorney.
May it please the court, Corey Cline appears in person via the Zoom and by counsel Zach Anthony also via Zoom.
All right, we are here set down for a plea hearing today. Now, my understanding from looking at the documentation that it looks like we're going to be going forward on the plea in case 20 CR 728 in case number 20 CR 192 will be dismissed once this plea is entered and accepted. So I'm just going to talk about case number 2020 CR 728 until we get to that point. Mr. Cline, to take up your plea today, I have to ask you a ton of questions, okay? In order to do that, well, if I ask you something you don't understand, you tell me that, and you and I will talk about it till we're sure we're talking about the same thing. Likewise, if you want to talk to Mr. Anthony in private, before you answer one of my questions, I have the ability to let you guys go to, it's called a breakout room, where you can talk without the rest of us hearing you. So if you need to do that, you just tell me and I'll let you do it, okay?
Yes, sir.
First things first, I have to have you sworn in. So if you'd raise your right hand, my court reporter will swear you in.
You solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Cline, I see in your petition, it says that you're 45 years of age and that you completed college. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. As you sit here today, are you under the influence of any alcohol or drugs or prescription medicine that might cloud your mind, keep you from understanding what you're doing?
None of the above.
You feel like your mind's clear today?
I do.
All right. And you know what you're charged with in both these cases, right?
I do.
You know that you don't have to change your plea in either of them from not guilty to guilty. If you wanted to maintain your not guilty pleas, you would have an absolute right to a jury trial in both cases. Do you understand that?
I do.
At that trial, the state would have to put on enough evidence to prove you guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. You would not have to prove anything yourself. Mr. Anthony would assist you throughout that trial. He could cross-examine and confront all of the state's witnesses, file any motions that you and he decided should be filed. That he could challenge all of the state's evidence. He could call witnesses on your behalf, and if they didn't want to come to court, he could use the subpoena power of the court to make them come. At that trial, you would have a right to testify, but you'd also have a right not to testify. And if you decided not to take the stand, the state couldn't use that against you. In other words, Miss Ellis couldn't get up and argue that, hey, Mr. Cline should be found guilty because he didn't get up and tell you his side. You understand all those rights?
I do.
All right. And if we had that trial and you were convicted of any or all of the charges, you would have a right to appeal those convictions to the appellate courts. If you didn't have the money to do that, a lawyer would be appointed to do it for you. You understand that?
Yes, sir.
All right. So if you enter this plea of guilty today, and I accept that, you're going to be giving up all of those rights, Mr. Cline, and there's not going to be a trial of any kind in these cases. Do you understand that?
I do understand, but that would be not included in the dismissed case, correct?
Well, correct. I mean, if I accept this plea today, which there's every indication that I will, at the end of accepting that, I'm going to dismiss the other case per the plea agreement.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So I'm going to put up here now the plea agreement that I have received, and I want to know if you can see this. All right. Come on, you. Can you see that document?
I can.
All right, I'm going to kind of scroll slowly through it here. Does that look like the plea petition that you and Mr. Anthony went over?
It's exactly the same.
All right. And there's a signature. In my case, it just says the one that Mr. Anthony sent to me just kind of typed out the fact that you had signed it or approved it and let him type that in. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Now I want to go up to where it talks about the plea agreement, and I'm going to read this to you, and I want to make sure that we all agree on what the plea agreement is. You're going to be pleading guilty to the possession of meth, a severity level 5 drug felony in case number 20CR129. All of the other counts in that case will be dismissed. Case number 20CR192 will be dismissed in its entirety with prejudice. And the parties are going to agree to jointly recommend to me that you be granted probation. Mr. Cline, is that your understanding of the plea agreement in these cases?
Yes, sir.
Has anybody promised you anything other than what I just read you to get you to plead guilty today?
No, sir.
Has anybody placed any force or threats against you to try and make you plead guilty today?
No, sir.
All right. Now I see the parties are going to jointly recommend probation. Ms. Ellis, Mr. Anthony, do you have an idea of what Mr. Kline's criminal history score is going to be?
Yes, Judge, I believe I can't remember if he's a B or a C, but he is in presumptive prison category. That's why we've agreed to jointly recommend probation, because we believe he will fall in presumptive prison category, yes.
Okay,
We also
so
believe
I'm
that-
sure that Mr. Anthony went over with you, Mr. Cline, that sentencing guidelines and kind of where he took what your expected criminal history is going to be and then down to the level of crime that you're pleading to and made some sort of prediction about what your presumptive sentence would be. Is that correct?
Yes, we went over that, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So it sounds like the parties think that you're going to be somewhere there on the drug grid, just outside of the probation box in the presumptive prison box, but they are going to agree to jointly recommend to me that I grant you probation anyway. Is that your understanding?
That is, sir.
All right. And you know that I'm not party to any of these agreements, and I'm going to listen very closely to what everybody recommends, but that I'm not bound by it, and I can give you any sentence that the law allows me to give you. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if you have the very worst criminal history score possible, which is an A, you could receive up to 42 months in prison and a fine of $100,000 with post-release of 12 months. Do you understand that's the maximum that anyone can get for this crime?
I do.
All right. Knowing all this, Mr. Cline, do you at this time have any questions for either me or Mr. Anthony about anything that we've gone over today?
Not at this time. No, sir.
Knowing all of these things that we talked about, do you still want to go forward with this plea?
Yes, sir.
All right. Mr. Anthony, do you know any legal reason why your client should not enter a plea today?
No, Judge.
All right. Then I'm going to ask you to count one in case number 2020 CR 728, which charges you with possession of methamphetamine, a severity level 5 drug felony. Mr. Cline, how do you plead? Guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
All right. Now I'm going to ask the state to tell me what they believe their evidence would be if we went to trial. I want you to listen closely because when they're done, I'm going to ask you if that's what happened. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Miss Ellis.
Yes, Judge, I am relying on the affidavit that was filed October 2nd, 2020 for this case. It alleges that on September 29th of 2020, officers were dispatched or went to do a business check at the Gables Motel at 6831 State Avenue here in Wyandotte County, Kansas. They observed a vehicle that was a white Infiniti G35. It was parked in the east corner of the lot. They ran the tag and it came back that it was a stolen vehicle. That is the nature of, or the reason why they attempted to make contact. At first, the officers believed the car was unoccupied when they came up to the driver's side. However, they realized there was a white female sitting in the passenger side and tried to make contact with her. Around that same time, they saw another individual who ended up being identified as the defendant, checking in and out of the lobby. And he appeared to the officer that he had seen the officer. He went back inside the office. He tried to go and make contact with the female. She was not able to be contacted at that time. She appeared to be intoxicated. And they ended up going around the back of the building where they saw the defendant seated on the floor, basically on the ground, outside of a hotel room. They were able to gather later in the investigation a number of different camera angles of the Gables Motel that showed the defendant pulling in the Infiniti, getting out of the driver's side, going into the office, checking in, appear to be paying for the room or what have you, reserving the room, as well as getting out of the Infiniti with some items in his hand, placing them outside of a hotel room, and then getting back into the car. So there's a couple of times that he enters and exits the vehicle. When they take hold of the items that were left both in the lobby and right outside of that hotel room, they find a bag that contains a small amount of methamphetamine that was presumptively positive in the NIC testing, the true narc drug identifier testing, of approximately 1.4 grams of methamphetamine. Based on their findings, they put him in custody, and that is the basis of these charges.
All right. Mr. Cline, is that what happened?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. I will find the defendant has freely, voluntarily, and intelligently entered into this plea. He knows the nature of the charges and the consequences of the plea. The state has provided a sufficient factual basis for a finding of guilt. Defendant has acknowledged that factual basis. I will therefore find that he is in fact guilty of possession of methamphetamine, a severity level 5, non-person drug felony. Pursuant to the plea agreement, the other charges in this case, as well as case number 192, are dismissed with prejudice. I'm going to order a pre-sentence investigation be conducted, and we will continue the sentencing pending that. My assistant gave me a date of June 4th at 11:30. How do the parties look on that date and time?
I will get coverage, Judge, so whatever's okay with Mr. Anthony, I'll be out of the office by that
All
point.
right.
Judge, I'll actually be out of the office as well.
On that whole day?
Actually, on that whole week, Judge, I'll be
Oh,
gone
okay.
until the 6th. I return on the 6th.
All right.
I'll be back by the 7th.
Let me take a look at my, here. I really want to give a date before I get out of here. Let me see if I can get my assistant. She's answering me immediately. All right. In the meantime, Mr. Cline, I have to advise you that as a convicted felon, it's prohibited for you to own or possess a firearm, certain kind of deadly cutting instruments like dirks, daggers, switchblades, basically knives that could be considered deadly weapons. And with that, anything else that I haven't covered, we're going to let Amanda go if that's the case, if we can be off the record. Yes, Mr. Anthony.
Judge, just briefly, I wanted to request this on the record. Mr. Cline has asked me if I can disseminate to him the discovery that basically amounts to the videos from the Gables Motel. There is, to my knowledge, nothing that is prohibited by statute in that discovery. There's no personal identifiers. There's nothing else. But certainly I will review that and scrub it of anything that would be listed by statute. Is there any reason I cannot make that available to him?
Ms. Ellis.
I don't think there is, Judge. I do think an admonition about him posting it or otherwise utilizing it. There are other people on those videos who I think their privacy rights are to be protected, particularly like the person who was on working that night, the worker. It's clearly shown on the video at some points. And so I think that I have a duty to request that those things not be put out in public, but I don't have a reason why he can't have them.
All right. Mr. Klein, I don't have any problem with you having those videos, but you can't put them up on Facebook or YouTube or anywhere else. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. My assistant we are adjourned. My assistant answered with June 11th at 10 by Zoom.
Yep, we can make that work.
Okay, that will be our sentencing date. Mr. Anthony, I didn't look down. Did the plea petition have a PSI request at the bottom?
It did not, Judge. I apologize. I just simply, he was in my office and I didn't fill it out, but I will get it. I'll call him when we're done here and get it offline and then send it to you.
Okay, all right. Anything else,
No, Your
ladies
Honor.
and gentlemen? All right,
Nothing.
thank you, Mr. Klein. Look, I'm gonna set our sentencing on that date, whatever that was I just said, I think June 10th at 11.
11.
And then I'm gonna send your attorney a link to that for Zoom, just like this one. He'll share it with you and we'll get together on that date, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you all. Have a